Meeting of the Milford Township Supervisors will now come to order. And this meeting is basically it's a workshop meeting to go over the proposed budget for year 2020. Penny Lors is on the phone from Texas, so she's attending the meeting via telephone, which makes it a legal meeting. Rachel and Penny has worked on this budget basically since the last meeting, and they've come up with a projected income of $462,559.57 with a projected expense of $447,783.43, which would give us at the end of next year an operating reserve of $14,776.13. There were some discrepancies in the last budget, being some of the money that we do get in from the state wasn't in the budget, one being liquid fuels, some of roughly $60,000, which is now in the budget. And there was also an expenditure of $78,000 that was not listed coming out of the budget, which was also liquid fuels. And there was some other small discrepancies that Rachel Hendricks had picked up. And this time I believe it has basically all been pretty much fixed.
Penny, can you walk us through the changes?
Okay, I have the same budget that you guys have, is correct?
12/23/19, upper left-hand corner.
What I have is a spreadsheet, I guess I'll ask Shahana. It starts out with the licensing, the TV cable franchise on the top,
That's what we have.
Yes.
and I did the real estate property taxes at $289,240, the delinquent tax at $12, with the real estate income tax at $302,740. Is that what you guys are showing?
Yes.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Yes, Penny.
Okay. And then all the way down, public utilities, all that's pretty much is the same.
You added to the real estate transfer tax, though, correct?
I did bump that up after I started thinking about a couple of the deals, like with Santos's property and things like that, that we probably should have a pretty good year this year. So we're gonna keep our fingers crossed. Fortunately, that's probably not the way to do it, but I don't know what else to do short of what we were just talking about before.
What normally,
The one thing I did see, let's see, I was looking for I cut the legal advertising back, and here I think is what I feel that we have to do. We're gonna have to call Gary a lot less. Shahana's gonna go for the training. I have all that information for the right to know request. And I figured $250 for each meeting for him, so it's $12,000, getting $8,000 for extra miscellaneous things. I took the legal advertising, what it was. Now, you know what it cost? Well, you know what, we'll just leave it there for now. And then secretary salary, I do feel that that should be bumped up $5,000, that should be $20,000. I didn't just didn't get a chance at the last minute to change that with Shahana. Telephone, postage, bonding, equipment, we put it at $500. I don't know if that's gonna end up being right or not. These are all just educated guesses. The insurance should pretty much stay the same, the personnel service there. We've done a lot of maintenance on the building this year. I don't think we're gonna be putting in any more. We've done the ceilings, we've painted the walls, we've changed electric, so I think we're pretty hopefully golden there. The electric, Right, you know, with 24, we bumped it up to 3,000 for cost of living, 28 for that, repairs and maintenance, we left at 2. I don't, just looking at the things now, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. The landscaping should be up to 9, because I think we just did that true green where I was just hoping that we could pull that right off the table, but I think the letter had already gone out. Workman's comp insurance at $6,000. I cut it down because I figured we were going to be cutting some of the salaries down. Fire fund is 17, that's a given. The donations we have in for the ambulance and for the Westville ambulance. And the pending zoning. Pretty much took the numbers of what we had from last year. Emergency management, that's something that we could probably play with. I don't know if we actually need to have a constable at every meeting, and that's something we can discuss at the January meeting. Wastewater, that's the small. Given, I don't know what that labor overtime, I think that should have been $7.72 of travel. I think that was for a bridge toll or something. I don't know, it's still not in the right place. Highway labor, try to stay all at the same prices. Okay.
Well, hospitalization is a big change, yes, Penny?
Do you feel like I've missed anything? And then the only thing is the highway construction did go over. Is Gary, is 50,000 a reasonable number to put in, or do you have a lot of work that still has to be done this year?
Well, right now, we're in pretty good shape, but we never know what's gonna happen. That's all.
Okay. And the debt principal and the debt interest, that's all there. Actually, the Social Security will probably end up being driven down too, depending on what's going on. And the retirement is in there now, the full retirement is there. And the workers' comp insurance will probably end up being driven down, but I was just gonna leave it high. Because it's $447,783. What do you think, guys?
I think we're still digesting, looking for the changes, because they're not,
Well,
we're trying to follow along.
what's normally realized from property transfer tax?
It varies every year.
I understand that, but what would be a reasonable figure?
Probably,
Well, if you want, we can take that down if you'd like, because we do have some money to play with in the budget. I'm just hoping that like all those houses up in, all the land up on in the one behind, Toll Brothers development. And maybe things will start selling or moving. I know, you know, it's just to have some, I talked to the local real estate agents, they said the market is going, so there's no one to keep our fingers crossed. And I mean, again, you can write it down if you feel that it's not realistic. Because I think, for the most part, these numbers are pretty realistic.
yeah, I think it's pretty good. Because this year wasn't the best year in the world, we still took 39,000.
I looked at the numbers for, in 17, the real estate transfer tax was over $97,000. In 18, the year-end estimate that was put out with the budget was $45,000, but I don't know what we actually realized. And
We
then,
actually realized on the transfer tax,
yeah, in 18.
we actually realized we put the two together, it was $34,000. I don't know why it ended up being in two separate lines.
You're talking about 2019? I'm talking about 2018, to look at the track record.
That's the same, hold on. It's showing 50,000, the estimate was 45.
So I think 39 is pretty reasonable.
And
Yeah.
2017, holy crap, I don't know what happened there, but it was $97,000.
That's because that's when, Conopac sold.
Altec Lansing, so.
Altec Lansing sold for $2 million.
Oh, God, if only that could happen every year.
Right.
So, like I say, I don't think that number is, I mean, like I say, if you want to lower it, we can lower it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable.
I don't think that's out of the mark.
I don't either.
Okay. Any other things, or basically just taking from last year's numbers?
Well, this doesn't tell us what our cash position is going into January 1.
Well, we have all those numbers, we have like $67,000 in Wayne Bank. I have it written down, let's see if I can find it.
We have a balance sheet, we don't.
That's 67,000 in the Wayne Bank account.
Which is lower than what was reported at the meeting last week.
Right.
And is a lot lower than getting you through 1/4 of your year of $400,000+ in expenses. So that definitely signals a cash flow problem for the first quarter of next year when you're trying to just wait until the tax revenue starts coming in.
No, it's gonna be tough, I have no doubt about that.
Well, you have to pay your bills. How do you intend on bridging the gap?
Well, we have 63,000, but you just got this, hold on 1 second. For the thing she just told me, there's like $87,000 in the snow removal one, or the one that Gary uses,
The liquid fuels tax?
the fuel tax, and he said that we could use, if we had to, our salt, and come out of that.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that.
And then when we come back in January, we're gonna have to probably look at raising, at least doing the taxes to pay for the ambulance and the fire. It's gonna have to be done in special assessment, because we haven't raised taxes in so long. We have 63,000 in the wage, 15,000 in the NBC, and 87,000 in the budget account.
So can you say that again?
63,000 in the wage, 15,000 and change in the NBC, the regular checking, and in the budget, PLGIT account, there's 87,000 and change.
Yeah, part of that's liquid fuels and another part is something else. I forget what it is. That's two separate accounts in Pledges.
And that can't be put into your general budget. That can't be put in your general fund.
The liquid fuel part can't, the other part can.
Okay.
What Penny is saying is that some winter snow maintenance might be able to be paid
Salt.
salt
I'm not gonna,
specifically.
yeah.
So do we have an idea of how much you think would be spent in that time frame?
We have 400 ton of salt on the contract, which is $40,000.
Okay.
I have bought 200 tons so far this year.
So I'm sorry, so of the 87K, what's available?
I don't know what I don't know what the liquid fuel side of that is, but there's two accounts in that budget fund. One is liquid fuels, which is controlled by PennDOT. You can only use it for certain things. I've never used it for anything but paving. Because there's never a question, if you pave the roads it's approved, there's never a question. I know a local municipality that's at $47,000 because they paved the wrong roads. And then they're coming out of their general fund. You can,
Can I ask a question?
yeah,
When the expenses are posted, or do they show where they came from in QuickBooks?
out of what account you mean?
Yeah, in other words, you're saying salt and paving and stuff like that comes from the state fuel, right?
Right now, salt comes out of our general account.
Okay.
I'm not sure the salt I buy is approved by PennDOT. That's why I've never pushed it, because I use treated salt. a little more money, but you use less. Plus it works down to 0. Regular rock salt starts working at about 15 and don't work for beans. That's one of the reasons our roads clear up so quick, because our salt is all treated. Go out and look at ours in there, it's blue, with a liquid running out of it.
So we certainly have more investigation to know if we can pay what we prefer to buy with the liquid fuels money.
Right.
So you're gonna work
It'll
on
make it a
that.
lot
I'll make a
easier.
phone call.
Right, okay.
I will call Scott tomorrow, maybe he's retired. I will call and find out.
Quite honestly, without a balance sheet and knowing what's spent monthly and which are the heavy months, if you just take your budget and divide it by 12, you're talking about $37,000 a month. You're talking about $112,000 easy before you even begin to take in tax revenue. So that's my question, is how are we gonna address that shortfall? Is there gonna be a loan in anticipation of the taxes, which is done by a lot of municipalities, or?
In which case, there would be additional interest that would be due.
Right, but I mean, if we know that there's a shortfall, if you have the right, there must be.
Well, the thing is too, on January 6th, if we do some more work, if we have to get more money, we can do a loan before if needed. I don't know if we're actually gonna need it. I really don't, because a lot of these things aren't due January, February, and March.
So we,
Like our insurance is coming due in May, and all the big things come due in May. And I know that we're gonna go very easy on the lawyers the next couple of months. And I even feel like the planning board is to put everything together and make one phone call, because I see people calling the lawyer all the time, and that's not right. And I know in Milford Borough, they had a put a stop to it too, because not every person who calls Tony Magnotta is going to charge us everything.
Well, that's an administrative issue that somebody needs to keep an eye on, how that's going. I mean, that's,
Yeah, that's what I was
that's
saying,
pretty
because
simple.
I don't call Tony unless I absolutely have to.
Right, but
But I
there's,
think that people, I want it to be worked through me. I would like people to talk to me so we can pull these questions together.
Well, then it should funnel through to you then. If somebody's gonna call,
Well, she'll be
Yeah.
the new chairman, so it will.
yeah.
so the $50,000 line item on highway construction, is that the liquid fuels, or is that in addition to the liquid fuels?
This 439 is the liquid fuels number, if I'm not mistaken.
439 is,
Highway construction, 50,000.
right, does that include?
That's liquid fuels.
That's not plus liquid fuels.
Actually, that figure could be 100,000, because that's what's gonna be sitting there come March. There'll be $100,000 on liquid fuel account come March. Right around
You think
100,000.
line 439 could be $100,000, Jerry?
Come March it will be.
wait.
Oh, really? That's what you're gonna get this year?
Well, there's 50,000 in the liquid fuels account right now, I believe, right around that. Pretty close, and I'll get another 60,000 in March.
Okay.
Well, I wouldn't change that line item for the spending until we have an actual real sense of whether we're gonna spend it all in that year or not, right? Because you didn't spend it last year, you
No.
didn't spend it all, so we might not plan to spend it all.
I don't plan on spending it because I keep our bids under 100,000, so I don't have to pay prevailing wage.
Ah, see, there's a method there, so.
Right.
So we
Over
don't,
100,000, you gotta pay prevailing wage, which adds about 35% to your project.
Oh, okay.
so we definitely wanna make sure that we're in the right, we're not adding things to the budget that we're not actually prepared to spend.
No, but I'm just saying, that's what will be there probably in March, about 100,000, roughly.
Okay, so I see that contributions has been zeroed out and culture grants, which is the other contributions line item, has also been zeroed out for next year. I see that your debt is broken into the two line items now.
Which debt are you talking about, Rachel, what line?
471 and 2.
I think I have, I don't think I'm looking at the same thing you are.
That's on page 5, towards the bottom.
I have one Excel sheet, I have one page of an Excel sheet, so that's what line number.
Okay, okay, it's line number 471 and line number 472, debt principal and debt interest.
I haven't break it out yet, but that's principal and the interest, because in the beginning of the year, when Bob was doing it, she wasn't breaking out the interest off of it. So Shahana went in today and she broke out the interest from the principal. We're supposed to, that's the thing.
Shahana did send me a breakdown that I asked in a right-to-know request for of some of the spending and some of the line items. So right now, there is spending to Meyer and Meyer that I think is listed under computer for the quarterly payroll taxes. And that should probably,
That should be under accountant.
well, we don't have an accountant line item on here right now. There's an auditor line item, but there isn't an accountant line item.
Okay. Now, I don't know, again, these aren't numbers that I've ever worked with as far as when you do it, like, in the business world. So I don't know if they've gotten a list, is that how this whole thing works, that Meyer and Meyer has given a list, and this is how, these are the numbers that people use when you're doing, accounting in the government world?
No, I don't think so.
So, no, okay.
I think it's just what it's evolved to here over time.
It's whatever guy did to set it up with.
Well, it's probably initially, just the way that it started out, and then as new items were added, new numbers were added.
Yeah. So is there any other questions or things that you think should be changed?
I think you gotta take the time, you're having a meeting next Monday, right?
Yeah, it's hard, the changes are not marked here, so it's hard to just look over this many numbers in one, 5-minute period and automatically have something jump out at you. I think we already fixed those problems that were easy to jump out.
I mean, I think this is a workable
So
budget for 2020 as it sits right now.
Any problems will be tiny and more minor problems than
I don't know how you feel about it, Richard.
I would say so, yeah, that anything else we find is likely to be smaller, yeah.
Right.
Well, it's kind of got to be smaller than 70,000.
Well, that was just one bill we got to put out. And I believe it's a workable budget for next year. And
So, as a 40,000-foot view from kind of what I've heard here, just to distill it down to basic, easy concepts and numbers. Q1 is going to be difficult. You may have to take out a loan. Okay, cash reserves could be 67. There's another 15 at NBT.
and there's probably another 30 in the budget account.
Probably. So
I don't know what that other account is. There's 2 accounts over there, budget, correct?
Right.
I'm sorry, what's legit?
Budget. It's
That's a
it's
state.
Pennsylvania Municipal Treasury, specifically for municipalities.
Right.
So, and once you start collecting tax revenues in March, that will square things away. You'll be able to pay off the loan from Q1.
If
And-
we need a loan.
Well, sounds like most likely,
Not necessarily.
I think they're right, we need a real, I think it would be very important for the first meeting of January to have a real cash flow breakdown month by
Right.
month,
Yes.
so that we know what we should be expecting
Yeah.
in terms of when the big,
And
you know,
when.
yeah. If, she's right, if certain expenses are one time a year and
Right.
that time comes in after the tax revenue, it could manage to work itself out, but on the surface, just as Kevin said, you take the number, you divide it by 12, and you multiply by the first 3 months, and you have a big problem.
yeah.
So you
Right?
have-
We have a big problem.
Right, but there's a lot of tax money in there the first couple weeks of March.
Well, okay,
Good.
so, yeah, so we're,
Good.
right,
A
but,
cash flow analysis will show that.
right, so the first 3 months are still, could potentially be problematic. Right,
Yes.
Well,
so,
I mean, you could pull a tax flow for the past year and see what it looks like for
Yeah.
January, February, and March.
Yep.
Right, but the big,
Absolutely.
but here, the big question is we know that we have an issue with the emergency management. We know that there's some other big line items coming that there isn't a lot of thought people, we're just trying to make a budget to get out of the way. And we're not looking at some of the other big items that are facing the township. And the planning money and the legal money for a comprehensive plan and that sort of stuff is not in this budget with what realistically is spent by municipalities. So there's.
Well, that is why when I felt like if we would sit down and talk about doing the emergency management tax and the ambulance tax, that would free up some money to be using for the planning commission and for the comprehensive plan and things like that.
Well, the emergency management tax, if you impose those, that's just an in and out.
What she's saying
Yes,
is
that's
they
now,
would
but
take
it's
the
also
money that they're
taxed
spending
now.
They would
now
also release
and direct it
$25,000
towards
out of the general fund.
That would be that emergency management tax towards something else. Because we're already paying that money, we're paying that 17,000 and that 10,000 out of the regular budget.
Right, but my point is when we get down to where we're really paying for it, that's not even, those numbers are gonna be pretty meaningless.
What does 1 mil generate
About
here?
28,000,
28,000. I had estimated it at 30. So,
28, 29,000, something like that.
so,
Because it fluctuates, I mean,
right, so in terms of instituting a 1 mil fire tax, what you're spending now, you're saying you would basically just be, it would be the same amount of money coming out
Be a wash.
of, just coming out of the designated additional tax.
right.
Right.
So that'd be $28,000 additional to our budget, which, that would be a lot of money to go towards the planning and things like that. And I think that would be, I think that would work, I really do.
For 1 year, but it's not gonna make any reserve for when you do have to, when you finally get to where you're dealing with emergency management and paying for ambulance.
And when do you think that's gonna be?
You're gonna see something within a couple of years, you're gonna get forced to it. I mean, I'm not, it's been kicked down, the can's been kicked down the road 3 years already.
Right.
So it's a full 3 years.
Yeah,
So-
and
so
so there's a lot of other things that have never come to fruition either, though.
That's right.
I'm just gonna put this out there so the two of you know how I feel about it. As a taxpayer, I think I would be somewhat offended by the idea of instituting a fire and ambulance tax, not to provide more resources to the fire or the ambulance, but just to free up money the township is already spending for other purposes. It was gonna
Okay,
generate,
that's fine, then you would have, would you be offended to have a one mil increase in your taxes? I know with Milford, every time not that they are maxed out now, and they have nothing to do, they're talking about an EIT tax.
That's been shelved, by the way, based on the last meeting at the borough. I asked that exact question. They have,
Okay, we'll see if that one doesn't.
well, yeah, I agree with, I agree with you, Penny, because I was kind of surprised by that answer myself, because my question was, you presented the EIT tax, there were going to be other revenue generators mentioned, and the answer that came back was, no, that's no longer necessary, which made me skeptical. I agree, but that was the answer I got.
Unfortunately, like everything else, the cost of everything is going up.
Of course.
Well, and everybody agrees with that, then would the supervisors be more proactive about planning for those increases instead of getting in the position that we're in now, where all the reserves has been spent, and now we're,
Well, the sad part is like, I don't know who, Jack Fisher, and I know a lot of people either like him or don't like him because of his position, that every year he would prefer to put in a 0.5% increase or something, so that you're not hit when all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, it's like, well, we've been using our reserve, we need to increase taxes. And yes, we do. I don't want to pay more taxes. I'm sure nobody in
don't
that
either.
room right now wants to pay more taxes. But it's not necessary either.
well, yes and no. Because if you spend your reserve on buying equipment that you could buy over time and not use your reserve, it may be more prudent. So there's
Well,
just,
that's what they did. They bought it over time and didn't take out they took out the loan for the equipment.
This most recent piece of equipment that was
the most
purchased last
recent,
year.
but up until then, they were using cash reserve to pay. So I think that.
No, we paid off one truck with cash reserves.
Okay.
And some other equipment that went along with it.
And we bought a $25,000 loader
Right.
to save putting a $150,000 backhoe in a salt pile.
Yeah.
That's what we did with reserves. But all the rest of the trucks were financed. Anything
Well,
else was financed.
Then the reserve went into the road then.
But at one point, I thought that.
It went into everything because there was no tax increases for 8 years, Kevin.
And that they should be using the reserve to buy it, so you can't have it both ways.
You don't want to raise taxes. For 8 years, I wanted to raise a mill or so down and it just went down the drain, so.
Yep.
Because I could see what we were doing and between your buddy Don and Gary, no tax increases, no tax increases.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is there a willingness to.
You know, I was one supervisor and I got beat up onto it every year. And, I don't want to pay taxes either, but I can see a necessary evil when you're living 8 years off your rate,
Of your savings.
off your savings, that it was going down.
Well, now it's down to a point that
Now it's down to
we
where
might
it's like
have to
this.
borrow for cash flow,
Right.
you know. There's definitely some belt tightening. I think that, especially in the first quarter of the year, we're gonna have to look at the cash flow very carefully and, this is not a, a free-flowing, budget for sure. This is a budget that is gonna have to be watched very carefully to ensure that,
Well, I think every month I'm hoping that Shahana will give us the budget with what we spent and then the amount in each of the accounts on the table. And I think that'll help because.
There's no reason why there shouldn't be a balance sheet.
Yeah.
There's no reason why there shouldn't be a balance sheet available to the general public at every meeting.
Okay.
There's no reason why, and what's been paid,
The
what
sad part
has.
is with QuickBooks, it doesn't generate the right way. I know she put this on Excel. I have not yet figured out that whole the way that they're using QuickBooks. So there's a few other things that I've seen that need to be done, and it's a matter of just sitting down, and now we have to change, because she's been taught by Vi, but I think there should be some different training, and I'm hoping between Rachel, because it sounds like she's really, really very savvy with the QuickBooks
Yeah,
program also.
I have got some QuickBooks
I mean,
experience for
I
sure.
know a good portion of it, but there is some that I'm always willing to learn, but,
Greek to me.
that between the two of us, we'll be able to pull it out.
Yeah, well, you can get a transaction report of every expenditure, and you can get it by payee, and you can get it by vendor, and you
Well,
can
the
get
thing
it
is,
by...
and this is the thing, is when you say by payee, when she does the credit cards, it goes as business card.
Yes, I see
And
that.
that's to be done is enter credit card charges, and every vendor should be in there.
Yeah, that's just, that-
Yeah.
Have
I
you
agree with
seen
you.
that?
That's
It's
just
like,
some
I've
house-
never seen it done
Yeah.
like that, but it
It's
has to be
administrative.
changed,
It's
so that
Yeah.
means we have to, re-educate Shahana on how it has to be done. And I wasn't gonna go in and step on anybody's toes, but meeting by, because I mentioned she's a great woman, but that's how I would do it, so. And it's worked for them for a long time, but now we can change things.
Mhm.
I know in the Quicken that I use at home, and I've been using it for 20 years, they do some weird stuff. Like in your income, there'll be transfers in and out of different accounts and that. And then in expenses, there'll be the same thing, and you gotta cross those
Yeah.
off to have,
Yeah.
it's, I don't understand the whole
Well, it's
concept,
confusing,
but,
And it's like, no,
you know?
it's so easy. But it is, and it's like, I don't know what to do. That's why I like the old green registry, but we don't do them anymore.
yeah, but you can cull so much information from from
Oh,
QuickBooks.
absolutely.
there's
It's
no-
scary.
There's no reason why it couldn't be general consensus on a good statement for each month that would just be available.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
absolutely.
part of what's going on.
And I think honestly it will help. I mean, if your position is trying to get the community to understand that you've held the line for as long as you can possibly hold the line, making sure that they have the information in front of them is critically important to having their buy-in to that process and their understanding that you really have been, holding the belt as tight or sticking your fingers in the dam or whatever you want to call it for as long as you could. And I think when that information is shielded from them, they have no way of knowing that, why it's happening, why all of a sudden, and they, take the approach that, there's recklessness or a desire to see taxes go up or something like that.
Well, I'm under the impression it's just like every other business, it's not my money, it's not a priority, and I'm not being mean or flippant, but it's like shut the lights off. It's like, well, it's like my kids. It's like, it's not your money, but it's my money, so like shut the lights off. Even small things like that all add up, and you don't realize it.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so are you guys going to vote on adopting this and making it available for public review for the next week before next week's adoption?
I think, do you have any other things that you feel is, there's nothing that is eyesore sticking out?
I don't see anything glaring. This is Rachel. I don't see anything glaring immediately.
Okay, the only change I would like for them to do is put the 20,000 in Shahana's in the secretary's number. And with that, Gary, are you good with it?
I'm good with it.
Okay, I'll change that. 15 through 20.
Okay, thank you, Shahana.
You're welcome. So that's line up 405.120, secretary's salary.
And like I say, I just put 25 hours times the salary, and it came up to like 18,000, but I figured she also has some nights that she works and things like that, so this way it would be all budgeted.
405, 120, change it 15 to 20.
Right.
And we gotta add another 5 to it.
Who's gonna be doing the taxes now? Is Shahana?
No.
No, Viola's still a
Viola's
tax
still a
collector.
tax
still a tax collector.
Oh, she is?
Yes.
Oh,
That's
okay.
an elected position, Bill.
Okay,
Right.
all right. That's
And
right.
her daughter is a deputy tax collector, so that's still done by her.
I'll make a motion that we approve this part of the budget for public input to be finalized on December 30th at the special.
But it'll be available.
It'll be available to the public.
I'll second that.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I would just suggest that you might want to consider putting it up on the website, only because you have 1 week and you have a lot of public interest generated by the news about the changes and errors in the budget. And the office, I'm sure, is going to be closed at least one day this week.
Be closed tomorrow and be open Thursday. Tomorrow, Wednesday, open Thursday and Friday.
Right, so
And you'll
it's,
need to advertise it in the Pocono Record.
well, the budget itself, you're talking about the overview.
This one.
Do these numbers change the overview that you put in the paper? Do you know how much? It will change it from the first time for sure,
Yeah.
because the road construction number
Right.
alone is
Right.
high
Yes,
enough.
both numbers are different actually.
Right. Well, they're gonna change right now, but it's gonna go from expenses to 452,000, with the extra 5,000. So,
And your original budget,
it's 423, I think. If I remember right.
I have the original one here.
Was what, 423?
428,
428?
yeah, 428, 429.
right,
It's for $28,636.
so Gary's right, that has to go in the Pocono Record because you don't have enough
Yeah,
time.
you need to call the Pocono Record. You're taking tomorrow off though, right?
I can't do it on Thursday, right?
Yeah, if you place the ad on Thursday,
Yeah, we only
and
need
on
it once.
Friday,
Yeah.
and it wouldn't matter if it ran Saturday, it doesn't matter. Sunday probably costs more, but
Yeah. I'd run a Friday and Saturday. Put it in Thursday, run a Friday and Saturday.
does it have to run more than once?
No, but just,
If you put it on the website, which is probably cheap for you, then I would only
yeah,
do
just
the
run
one
it on
day.
Friday.
Yeah, and put it on the website.
And put it
Put it on the website, yeah.
I don't know why I gave you my copies.
Well, one other point of concern for me is that Rachel's supervisor-elect and your work seem to be working with her, but she's being asked to submit right-to-know requests for information in reference to the township, which I think at this point in time is,
I've never asked her to do it.
no, but that's.
Am I right, Rachel?
But that, well, while we have the two supervisors available, I think you should agree that whatever she's asking in reference to the township, she should have free access to.
I've agreed to
I'll be honest with you, Kevin, I didn't know for right to know if I was gonna be putting myself in a position or Gary in a position, meaning Williams, that we weren't supposed to do it. I don't know everything about that. I'm the first to admit, so.
That right to know law, it's a pain, right?
I totally disagree.
Something that I'm not.
I'm very familiar with right to know because of the
Okay.
many years that I did the coroner's office. And if you talk to the right to know people in the state, if it's information that the public should have, it's easier to just give it to the requester.
That's what I'm saying.
Don't just give it to.
Welcome to have it. I just, like I say, I didn't
Well,
want to
but
put
the-
anybody in a position that they weren't supposed to be in.
The
Making people file
township,
the
the
forms.
It's not that
township,
we're hiding anything.
the township has taken the position that right to know requests are being held for everything. And the extension is being considered on
And
most of them.
that's what needs to be changed,
And
and
they're-
that's why Shahana's gonna go
and
for
they're-
classes.
And they're
And
given,
get it all done and get it finished.
a big portion of the expense this year has been right to know requests being reviewed by the attorney.
I know, and
Because
it's
there were
something.
right to know requests that I did that were purely straightforward requests. And I know they were reviewed by the attorney. I mean, that's just throwing your money away.
That's throwing your money away. I completely agree.
I agree with you, Kevin.
Yeah, I think, honestly, I think there is a cultural issue that we can easily change to move away from this, do we have to provide those documents to what the law says, which is that everything should be presumed open unless it falls under an exemption.
if it's an investigation, if it gives personal information, if it does things that are, I mean, it's really simple to figure out what you're able to give and what you're not able to give. You know, and common sense rules.
Try it with the police department, I
And,
guess.
and
Well,
quite,
that's a good
well, in
way.
the coroner's office similarly, but I also think that
Just like
we
you.
have one part-time individual working administratively, so to make her handle the request 4 or 5 different times until she's answering it.
Well, that's all gonna change.
Well, there's
Yeah.
some of the,
Yeah.
there's some of the requests that are as simple as, you could tell the people that they could come to the office and they could examine the records while you're in the office doing other work.
Right.
Yeah,
You know, so some of this is really, and with the coroner's office, many times, that's what I did. I just told people, come in and sit at my desk, and we'll go, and I'll give you what we can, and we'll redact what we have to, and
And my only concern with that approach is that we have to make sure that we understand that this office is only open part-time when most of our
Right, no.
community is at work.
and I think it'll make
Yeah.
Shahana's life a lot simpler
I
too.
think so
What I'm
too.
saying, it's like if you're interrupted, it's like if your customers, you gotta wait on them, but you have to get the work done too, and it's hard.
Absolutely. Okay,
I'll make a motion, we adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, everybody.
Yep. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Fanny, you gonna
Merry
second?
Christmas, everybody.
Yep.
I guess you got a de facto.
Merry Christmas.